I'm Rich Board. I'm with J. Park Maryland Living, and I'm here with Jim Melton of Melton Inspection Services. How you doing, Jim?
Good. How you doing, Rich?
Good. So I guess to start out, let's. What is an inspection? A home inspection?
All right. So to get into it, a home inspection, in the legal sense of how it's viewed in Maryland, if you were to look at our standards of practice, it's going to be an inspection of a property or home, and it's considered a visual inspection only. So, as far as it being a visual inspection, the reality is that's not usually the case. You're not going to find too many home inspectors today that are just simply going to only visually look at a home. We're going to typically have tools we use. And just keep in mind, we're not required to actually use any tools on an inspection, but you've been on inspections with me and probably other guys. We all have tools. We use tools like moisture meters, circuit testers, voltage testers. I have roof boots that help me get on the roof for special steep roofs. Guys use drones, cameras. I mean, you name it. There's tons of the infrared cameras. So those are all things that are actually going above and beyond our standards of practice. But basically, in general, it's a visual inspection of the home. We are going to basically test certain components of the home. We're going to evaluate their performance. We're looking for safety issues. We're looking for items not working properly, or items that just aren't installed at all. I usually like to go over a little spiel with folks before I do a home inspection, just to kind of give them an idea of what it is. So basically what I do typically is start with the outside of the home with the roof. With the roof, what I'm looking at is a general age condition of the roof, items that need repair, basically things that could let water into the house.
Right.
My next step is typically I start at the front of the home and I do a big circle looking at siding, windows, doors, exposed foundation areas, deck structures, and same thing. I'm looking for items that could let water into the house. Any safety issues, anything not installed properly, are going to go into the report. And then also, we also will put in sometimes recommended maintenance items that aren't technically defects, but just help you know that we're here prepared to do this in the near future. Like your decking on the deck is it's weathered, it needs to be restained. That's a maintenance item. I don't get into the specifics of who is responsible to repair things or update things, but that's something that, for example, wouldn't necessarily be a defect, but it's something the homeowner is going to want to know they're going to have to do sooner than later.
Right.
Then from there, we start on the interior of the home. Typically, I'll start in the kitchen. I'll check appliances, plumbing, electrical, make sure everything's working properly. And if not, note it. Installation items, safety items like GFCI protection at the countertops and things like that. From there, I'll usually go room by room, checking doors, windows, outlets. And then as we come across the bathrooms, I'll flush toilets, run sinks, tubs, showers, check for leaks and safety issues. And then at some point, we'll find your attic area. Some homes don't have attics, some do. We're checking structure, ventilation, insulation. We're not required to check for pests, but, again, a lot of home inspectors are going to go a little bit above the standards of practice. So if I see trails or holes in the insulation that look like mice have been in the attic, I'm going to note it. And at some point, we're down to the lower level, depending on the type of home. If you have a crawl space or a basement, some homes are on a slab, so there won't be any kind of lower level structure, but crawl space homes, basements, we're looking at foundation structure, and then limitations. So basements sometimes are finished. We can't see everything, and that gets down to, we try to get to everything we can. But that's where the visual inspection kind of is limited to what we can and can't do. I can't smash holes in walls. I can't rip things apart that can't be put back together. All right. Now, also, we're going to take a look at the heating and air conditioning system. Depending on the time of year, we may or may not be able to run, for instance, the air conditioning like this time of year when it's colder out. We can still look at the installation, the age, heating system, same thing, depending on the time of year. We typically won't run the heat pump when it's 95 degrees outside. But like a gas furnace, of course, we can run those. But again, it's just we're looking at age, condition. I typically will note things that are considered on average beyond life expectancy, and I'm hoping that
Right.
clients take that into consideration. And then other items like water heater, we'll take a look at the age, condition, operation, any electric panels. We open those up. We'll check the wiring inside those. And then there's chimneys. There's limitations there. So chimney inspections typically are going to be an exterior only inspection by the home inspector.
Okay.
If it's accessible to the roof, I'll take a look at either the chase or the masonry chimney, the cap, the crown, and then from the lower level, depending on what it's connected to, either stove, furnace, water heater, fireplace, we'll
Right.
take a look at that component. But again, the limitation is going to be the actual interior flue. And a lot of times in my reports, I'll have to put, recommend a chimney sweep,
Right.
level 2 chimney inspection be done. And there are going to be other limitations on a home inspection that need to be considered. For instance, if there's a pool on the
Mhm.
property, it's an ancillary service that some home inspectors will inspect. Some may recommend that they get looked at by a third party. Same thing with piers and docks,
Right.
generator systems, a lot of low voltage systems. A lot of buyers aren't aware that we're not testing those, and sometimes we're not able to.
Yeah.
Like low voltage outdoor lighting. I mean, I don't have a plot where all the lights are.
Right.
And a lot of times they're on timers that the seller has set to come on in the evening.
Right.
We're doing these inspections typically during the day.
Right.
And these are things you can inquire with the seller, and I'll have that in my report is, the system's here.
Right.
Let's have you talk to the seller about it, find out a plot of the lights and that kind of thing. Same with irrigation systems. I don't know where all the sprinkler heads are,
Right.
and I can't test them all. And if I were to do that, it would be an added inspection that, very few guys do that. You can always
Right.
call an irrigation company. And a lot of times the seller has documentation on it being winterized and serviced. And if they don't, it's certainly a good idea for the buyer to get that done.
Right.
So that's the long and short of what a home inspection is.
When somebody's putting a contract on a house, what should they look for in a home inspector to hire?
As far as choosing an inspector, I think it should be said that there sometimes is this thought process that some buyers have that, in general, all home inspectors are the same. It's just not true.
Yeah.
Just like anything, you're going to have guys that are good at what they do and guys that aren't good and guys that have a lot of experience and guys that don't. A lot of times I'll get these phone calls sometimes from buyers that they are doing what we call price shopping. I understand that, it's an expensive, not expensive, but it's an added expense to buying a home.
Right.
That sometimes they're unsure of the cost
Right.
and they're trying to save some money because they're buying a house. But then they get kind of focused and hung up on the price versus the actual person that's going to be helping them through the purchase of the home by inspecting it.
Right.
And one of the things that I think is very important to look for is an inspector that you want to find out how much experience they have
Right.
doing home inspections. So, for instance, I've been doing inspections now for 15, coming up on 16 years in April. I've probably performed now over 3,500 home inspections in the state of Maryland.
Yeah.
There will be guys that if you call them, chances are they're not going to have as much experience. And there are going to be some guys that are fairly new to this,
Right.
with very little experience. And unless you talk to them, you may not find that out. And so the other item you want to find out maybe is their background. There's guys that do what I do that have become very successful and are very good at their job that came from backgrounds that weren't in construction or any type of trade. And, that's great. I can tell you though, from at least my personal experiences, if you have some experience in construction or in a trade,
Right.
it gives you invaluable experience to apply to a home inspection. So
Okay.
finding out what their backgrounds are is a great idea to just kind of get a gauge. And it may even find that there could be concerns with the house specifically that this particular inspector just happens to have more knowledge about than maybe some of the other components or items in the home because he literally worked in that trade. So, so for example, I worked for years doing mold remediation, waterproofing, water mitigation, restoration work.
Right.
So I have a very keen sense of how to look at a house and sort of determine that, where's the water going? Where, starting on the outside, where can there be potential problems for water inside? And then knowing where to look inside are kind of things. I know where a seller might put the boxes under the stairs to hide the drywall backside where there might be some mold there. Other guys are going to have other particular sets of skills like that for different components of the home. So we come from all walks of life. Like I said, and some guys have more experience in certain parts of the home than others, but those are really important. So experience and background, I think, are a big deal. And then just taking into consideration your realtor's recommendations. I know a lot of realtors are going to recommend probably 2-3 guys. And if, it's okay to go and try to do your own due diligence and find your own inspector, and that's encouraged. But also, you're working with your realtor, so it's almost it's not assumed, but I would assume that you're probably going to trust your realtor more than most other folks in the transaction of the home.
Hopefully,
yeah.
That's the goal.
When they give you these guys that they trust, it's also them kind of putting themselves on the line, right? Saying like, look, here's the guys I recommend. Here's the guys I trust. And, that might be a great avenue to go to just look up those 3 guys and again, call them, find out their background and, see if they're a good fit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, we often think sometimes home inspection, buyer, we're in the contract period of closing, but there is value to a seller getting a home inspection. You want to talk maybe a little bit about pre-listing?
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as doing a home inspection for a seller, which I have been doing a lot more and more these days, it's a great benefit. Excuse me. It's going to be a type of inspection that is more geared towards obviously identifying any kind of major problems that could come up when they finally have listed it and that buyer gets a home inspection. And, I'm not always privy to all the information after I do a home inspection for a buyer, but I know that sometimes deals fall through, and it can be sometimes due to major issues found on the home inspection that the seller just didn't know about. Sometimes they know about it, but sometimes they're not aware of it. And it's a big shock to everybody involved. And I can tell you that, my experience 9 times out of 10 when I do a pre-listing inspection, I uncover at least one item like that could be a potential shock value to a seller that they weren't aware of. Whether it's, I'll give you an example. The other day, I was doing a house. It was a waterfront that the seller had been living there for maybe 10 years. And it had just rained a whole lot. And the side of the home, the gable side facing the water, we had a decent amount of rain the last couple of days before that. And it was sunny out, dry out. And looking up at the deck, it was a cantilevered balcony. And I could see water coming down in little drips from behind the siding.
Okay.
So, it's an unfortunate find. It means that she's getting water behind the balcony flashing. There's a potential for water damage and rot there. However, she did the pre-listing inspection with me. She found this item, and now she's in the process of getting it repaired. Which is, in terms of the inspection, if let's pretend for a second she didn't go that route, and this was discovered on the inspection on the buyer's side, now they're running up into a roadblock, right? Because now there's this potential big issue. We don't know the severity of it. I can't rip the siding off. No one can, until it's further reviewed by a contractor. no one's going to really know how big the issue is. And
Right.
there's definitely situations like this where the buyers, if they're under the gun, they might just say, you know what?
Well, yeah, if they have a way out, they may look for that way out, or they may try to negotiate,
Exactly.
price down, and you lose out on that.
And touching on that, and this is more just from experience, being sort of because typically when I hand over the inspection report,
right,
that beyond that, I might get phone calls and questions, but sometimes they keep me kind of in the loop as to what's going on. And, sometimes I have found that the buyer may find one contractor, he comes out, and the price that is given for the repair seems exaggerated, to put it simply. Whereas, and I think it's a lot of times the contractors know that this is a situation where everybody's sort of, again, under the gun. There's roadblock. He's like, well, look, I'm the guy that's going to fix it, but here's my price. Whereas, alternatively, you do the pre-listing inspection. Now we've discovered the problem. The seller has time to go out on their own and find different contractors, get a few estimates.
Right.
In the end, save money,
Right.
basically, right? Because you don't know which direction the buyer's going to go in those situations where they're going to say, well, this is the estimate I was given.
Right.
So, and then you guys are left negotiating how to deal with that amount of money in the equation, where if we take care of it ahead of time,
right,
not only is there no roadblock, the cost to the seller is now much smaller,
right,
and there's no big red flag.
Right.
There will be buyers that will see that, and they may not even look for an estimate. They might just say, I'm not comfortable with this issue. It seems too big to me. I think I'll just try to find the other house down the road.
Right.
And obviously nobody wants that. So that's kind of where the pre-listing can really help.
Yeah. So anybody that might not want to do a pre-listing inspection, do you have any advice for them?
As far as, pretty much me as a home inspector, I can't provide any other inspection beyond a home inspection. It would have to, unless I was called to only evaluate a particular component on the home, which is fine. Every now and then I'll do that. Usually I've done that for folks that are living in the home and they're concerned about something, or they had a contractor do some work and they want to have somebody, a third party, look at it, which, I'm always willing to help with those. But as far as if they don't want to hire an inspector, at minimum, I think there's some important items on a home that every homeowner should probably think about getting taken care of ahead of time. One of the big ones would be, or a couple of the big ones would be, for instance, your heating and air conditioning system. If it's older, let's say, 10 years, 20 years old, and you've never had it serviced and you've been in that house for 15, 20 years, it's time to get it serviced. It's time to get it evaluated. It's again it goes back to almost like a pre-listing where you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And if you have these items ahead of time inspected and serviced, not only is it good for you to basically have that taken care of, any major issues that might arise from that particular inspection, but also it gives everybody that warm and fuzzy feeling,
right,
including the inspector, that someone else was out there looking at it. I'll still do my evaluation. However, it's a good feeling knowing it's been looked at recently by a heating and air conditioning contractor. And there's items just like that. A chimney is a good example. The one I was saying with a level 2 inspection. Well, the buyer's going to get one of those, and you can, again, be up against a wall and a roadblock with a chimney inspection if something comes back. Well, you get the chimney inspected prior to listing the home. They can sweep it for you. They can look for any major issues, and so you've sort of eliminated that potential problem that might come up in the home inspection or the chimney inspection that the buyer may do. Roofs. When a roof is over, say, I want to say 5 years, but usually like on an asphalt shingle roof, on around 10 years, you start to have items that are going to need maintenance and repairs. I mean, almost every roof I get on that's about 10 plus years old, I find items that need repair or maintenance. And for whatever reason, buyers typically will look at that and think, oh my gosh, there's a roof leak here.
Right.
And they automatically assume this is a big issue. And a lot of times it can be as simple as a cracked plumbing vent boot that is just a few $100s to fix. You get that taken care of beforehand, and it's not an issue. So what I'm saying is, if you haven't had a roofer go up and look at your roof in the last 10 years and it's 10 or 15 years old, get a roofer out there just for maintenance repair items. You know, and then simple things too, like cleaning the gutters, making sure those are clear on the outside of the home. Go around the outside of your house. This is a homeowner maintenance item. Update caulking, fill gaps. You know, if you see something, just do a quick preview. Anyone can do this. You just go around, look for something that, if you see a ton of damage and rot around windows, you know that's going to come up. You may want to get that taken care of before the inspection. Trees, trim all your trees back. Bushes, keep those clear from the house. It's a simple homeowner maintenance item. Inside the home, you know, there's a lot that you can do. You know, as far as major items, we already touched on the HVAC system. I would say simple things that you can either get an electrician for, or, you know, obviously someone that's handy enough can do it. But GFCI protection in bathrooms and kitchens in older homes, it comes up every time. Update those receptacles, the countertops, bathrooms, garage, and it doesn't become an issue on the home inspection. It doesn't scare the buyers when they see that there's no GFCI protection in all these places. And older homes, and keep in mind, I probably should have said this before, but home inspections aren't code inspections. We're not there as a code official. We're not requiring anything be done. We can't.
Right.
All we can do is, here's our recommendations for updates, repairs. But you know, at the end of the day, the buyer is probably going to want some of these things done.
Right.
And so even if you don't hire a home inspector to do a pre-listing, going around the home and doing some of these things, hiring a few trades just to look at some of the major components and have those kind of squared away ahead of time is a great idea.
So we talked about, you know, pre-listing inspections for sellers, but what could a seller do to prepare for the buyer's home inspection?
Yeah, so the day of the inspection. There's a few things that you know are going to be needed from the seller. You know, because I could tell you, I could give you a number of stories of times when it made our job more difficult because the home wasn't really prepared by the seller for us to get to certain items.
Right.
Basically, in general, we need access to certain areas of the home or components of the home.
Right.
And when someone's living there, we understand that. I mean, we're not asking someone to, you know, put everything in a storage pot.
Right.
But what we do need is access to, for instance, in a garage where there might be an electric panel. I can't tell you how many times people have a lot of stuff stored. Now, not every home inspector, for instance, I will generally either check with the seller if there's some big items that we might need help moving if they're home, or if there's just a ton of stuff stacked up, I'll move it out of the way. But not always. I mean, I have at times when it's like they're running a business out of their garage, and the garage literally has 40 boxes of who knows what stacked up in front of the electric panel. And at that point, I'm excluding the inspection of the electric panel and suggesting that the seller then get someone to move it and have somebody come back. Typically, the recommendation is to have an electrician come back and look at the electric panel, which then becomes a hindrance to the buyer.
Right.
It causes a bit of confusion between all parties.
Right.
There are times when the seller may have to actually, I've had the seller either pay me a re-inspection or, you know, a second inspection where I come out and only look at the electric panel once they've cleared it, or they pay somebody else.
Right.
So it can cost the seller sometimes money just because they didn't get everything out of the way. And that's not the only component. I mean, you know, basements where there's the heating and air conditioning system or water heater.
Right.
If it's in a utility room, we really need access to at least to the front of them, attic access points. You know,
Right.
a lot of times they're going to be in a closet, and folks sometimes have tons of stuff stored in front of it. And it's not just the benefit of the buyer, right? It's not just the benefit of me, it's the benefit of the seller, again, because now I can get to that component. I'm not putting in my report that I can't get to it and that someone needs to come out and still look at it. Also, I assume a lot of sellers don't want us touching their things, right? I've had people with very expensive paintings or TVs, computer, entire desks in front of these things. And you know, a lot of times if the seller's not there, I'm not very comfortable with moving some of these things that could be expensive if they fall over and break. So now I'm excluding it, which I don't want to do. But if ahead of time the seller's aware that, you know, I need access to attic access points, electric panel, heating and air conditioning, water heater components, you know,
crawl spaces.
Crawl spaces. You know, that's a good one to touch on. You know, sometimes people have a lot of stuff kind of blocking the crawl space access, either on the outside or even on the inside. They just stuff everything in. They can't get under it. Decks too. You know, sometimes getting under a deck, people have a lattice all the way around. I can't get under it to really inspect it. It helps to have either an access door or maybe a piece of lattice removed. You know, so these are hopefully things that will, in the end, make everything run smoothly. There's no hiccups during the inspection on things we can't check, and the seller is able to just allow the buyers to have access. And one other thing that I can touch on is sellers being home for the inspection. So it's their home. Obviously, they can be home for the inspection. It's not a requirement. It's certainly not by me to make sellers leave the home. But again, to make everything kind of run more smoothly, if the seller has a way to vacate the home during the home inspection, that's ideal. It gives the buyer time and the ability to speak openly and freely with myself doing the inspection, the realtor. And I don't know, sometimes I get the feeling that maybe a seller might believe, well, they're there, they can help. But I'd say 99% of the time, if they're there, and especially if they're trying to kind of follow us around, there needs to be an understanding that technically I'm not supposed to be discussing findings in front of the seller. They're not my client. But sometimes they kind of end up mentioning a few things that maybe were more beneficial to us than they realized about items that are wrong. And so the suggestion there is just, if you can leave the house during the inspection and give the buyer their chance to look at the home, again, it's going to, and then everything's going to run more smooth that way. So
it's good stuff. So how can anybody reach you if they're looking to get a home inspection? Or the company that I own is Melton Inspection Services. I can be reached at 410-991-4067. You know, you can contact me there or through email at jim@meltoninspectionservices.com. And you know, if they're interested in doing the home inspection, I usually will have, depending on the time of year, you know, anywhere from a few days notice is all I might need, or up until a week. It depends. So you know, spring market's about to kick off, so it's busy.
Call early as soon as you get a contract ratified. In fact, I think it's a good idea to try to line up an inspection before the contract's ratified. I have quite a few folks call me before they put the contract in, and then they let me know that they're, you know, possibly going to go under contract. And I have no issue with sort of penciling folks in, giving them my schedule ahead of time, so that in the event that the contract is ratified, we might be able to do the inspection the next day. Now you've got X number of days after that to, you know, possibly get another contractor out to look at a certain component. You know, let's say we find a foundation issue. It's not always easy to get a foundation guy out right away. But if you've gotten that inspection done the very next day after a contract's ratified, and you've got whatever many days are left in the inspection contingency period to get that done, rather than waiting until the very last day, or you're already a few days in and kind of ho-humming it, and then you're like, oh, you know, I should probably get that inspector come out here and look. So call early, call ahead of time.
Excellent.
And then we can get you booked.
All right. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
Take care.